Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to my channel. If you live in the US, you're probably aware that we're having a tough time importing Sable brushes right now. I use Rosemary&Co Series 99 and 33 Sable brushes, and I recommend them every chance I get. Unfortunately, we just can't get them right now. I reached out to Rosemary and she kindly sent me a few Red Dot series synthetic brushes to review for the channel. So in honor of Orktober, let's use these new brushes to paint a classic Rogue Trader era Space Ork from 1987. We also had a friendly Orktober painting competition over on Discord, and we'll be sharing the winners at the end of the video. We also have a set of recipe cards to go along with the video, and you can download them and print them out. Details about how to get them will be down in the description below. The first half of the video will be beginner friendly, and we'll cover the basics and paint the model to a battle-ready quality. In the second half, we'll spend a little more time and add some highlights. So let's grab our brushes and get started. After assembling the model, I undercoated it with a bright white primer and attached it to a cork for easier handling. I'm going to be using a number 2 brush for most of the model, and I'll switch over to a 0 for some of the more detailed work later. I painted the skin first with a mix of 1 part Auric flesh and 2 parts Militarum green. If you want a variety of orc skin recipes, check out this video I made here. Next, I shaded the skin with a generous layer of croak green. I'm already noticing that this brush doesn't hold as much paint as a Sable brush does, so I'm having to go back to the palette more frequently. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's something to be aware of. I base coated the trousers next with Flesh Terrors Red. After the first layer dried, I painted a second for a rich finish. Next, I base coated the shoes and shirt with Wildwood. I'd like the other leather to be a blue-leaning, cool black, and Leviathan blue will be a good base coat for that. Next, I painted a layer of Basilicanum gray over the top of the Leviathan blue, and I also painted the hair. I base coated the fur pelt next with Gore-Grunta fur. After the first layer dries, you may want to paint a second layer for a darker finish. I want the shoulder pads and helmet to be a bright yellow, so first I touched up any mistakes with white. I base coated the armor with Bad Moon Yellow, and after the first layer dried, I painted a second for an opaque finish. Next, I shaded the armor with Cassandora Yellow. You could apply a second layer if you want deeper shadows. I want a second shade of red on the model, so I base coated the weapon and shoulder icon with Blood Angel's Red. Right now it looks kind of close to the other red, but I'll fix that in the highlighting stage later. Next, I base coated the metal with Iron Hand Steel, and after the first layer dried, I painted a second for a bright, even finish. I painted the dagger handle and the bracelet with Runelord Brass, and after the first layer dried, I painted a second. Next, I shaded all the metal with a custom color I like to call Armor Wash, and you can learn how to mix your own in this video here. This is a mix of equal parts Rattling Grime, Contrast Medium, and Lamian Medium. If you don't feel like mixing anything, you could apply a couple layers of Nuln Oil instead. I painted the remaining details with black, and added a narrow black line wherever the model could use more definition. I also painted the underside black. The number 2 brush isn't quite sharp enough, so I switched to a size 0 for the eye and some of the other details. I painted the eye with Fire Dragon Orange, leaving a narrow black outline. Then I painted the teeth with Bone White. At this stage you could base the model and call it finished, but I'd like to add some highlights and extra details, so let's keep going. Starting with the skin, I painted a glaze style highlight with Ork flesh. Dilute the paint with water, and with very little paint on the brush, apply a thin layer on the raised edges and wherever the base coat looks uneven. Build up a few layers, one on top of the other, and gradually highlight the raised areas. Next, I added a small amount of toxic yellow into the Ork flesh and highlighted some of the sharpest edges and corners. Now is a great time for me to ask you to do those YouTube things that we all love so much. If you're liking the video so far, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. If you really like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel further, please consider Patreon or a YouTube channel membership. We have some perks including a Discord server, printer-friendly PDF files of our new recipe cards, and early access to videos. Moving on to the red fabric next, I painted a glaze style highlight with Mephiston Red. Just like with highlighting the skin, dilute the paint with water, and with barely any paint on the brush, build up some thin layers, one on top of the other. I want to keep this red more muted, so rather than highlight with a vibrant orange, I added a small amount of Jokero orange to the Mephiston Red, and I picked out the sharpest edges. I want the other red to be really bright, and I highlighted those areas next with a glaze of Evil Sun's Scarlet. Next I picked out the sharpest edges with Fire Dragon. I'm noticing the brush doesn't have as sharp of a point as a Sable brush does. I can still get pretty sharp lines with it, but I have to paint a lot slower and more carefully. Next I highlighted the edges of the brown leather with Baneblade Brown. Baneblade Brown is a fairly weak color, and you may need to paint a second layer for a solid finish. Sometimes I like to mix in a very small amount of white to help increase the opacity. I highlighted the fur next with Jokero Orange. Next I highlighted the edges of the black leather with Thunderhawk Blue. You could add a few scratches here and there if you feel like it. I added one more highlight on the sharpest edges and corners with Administratum Gray. Next I added some rust to the steel areas with Mornfang Brown, diluted with water. There are some different rust effect paints on the market, and you could use one of those if you like, but I think plain brown paint works well enough for me. I added some highlights and scratches on the metal next with Stormhost Silver. Next, I highlighted the edges of the brass with Canoptic Alloy. I'd like to add some freehand to the model, and nothing says old school orcs quite like a checkerboard. I started by adding a horizontal line along the bottom with Evil Red. Try to make this line as narrow as possible. Dilute the paint with water and have very little on the brush. Then I added some evenly spaced vertical lines. Next I added the top line to every other square. You could paint a horizontal line all the way across if it helps you keep the line straight, but you'll have to erase every other line with yellow paint later. Once I was happy with the outline, I filled in every other square with a couple layers of diluted paint. Remember to have very little paint on your brush. The less paint there is on the brush, the more control you'll have over it. With the red squares filled in, next I touched up the edges with moon yellow. Keep in mind that the dark red lines add a little bit of extra width to each square, so I like to trim down each of those squares with yellow. That way they're all equal size. Next I highlighted the edges of the yellow armor with Toxic Yellow. I added a few scratches as well. I don't think I've painted a purple gem on the channel yet, so let's go with that. I began by painting the gem white, leaving a narrow black outline. You may need a couple layers for a solid finish. Next I painted the gem all over with Magos Purple, and I tried to concentrate more of the paint near the top of the gem, and less on the bottom. After the first layer of Magos Purple dried, I painted a second layer, and then a third, concentrating each layer a little closer to the top. Next I shaded the top portion with a glaze of Evil Red. Finally, I added a couple reflective dots with white paint. I used an old brush to apply a generous layer of wood glue to the top of the base, and then dipped it in fine sand. After the glue dried, I painted over the sand with thinned Warboss Green, followed by a dry brush of Moon Yellow, and then I painted the edge of the base with a couple layers of Warboss Green. After painting a couple models with these red dot brushes, I have to say I'm pretty impressed with them. I think these are the best synthetic brushes I've used. They have good points, and the fibers have the spring-like quality that Sables are known for. That being said, unfortunately they're still synthetic brushes, and they have some limitations. They just can't make as fine of a line as Sable does. I had a tough time getting the detail I wanted, and I also noticed the brushes were starting to get that dreaded hook on the end. I dipped the ends in hot water, and I was able to straighten them out, so it's not too much of a problem for me right now. These brushes do seem to be holding up pretty good so far, and they're definitely more durable than the other synthetics that I've used. Considering the kind of detail work we do on miniatures, I think Kolinsky Sable is still king, but overall I would score the red dot brushes fairly high. They have a very affordable price, and they can handle most routine painting work. I think they're ideal for beginner and intermediate painters, and the best choice for anyone who wants to avoid using animal products. If you want a good value brush for base coats, contrast, shades, and simple highlights, Red Dot series brushes are a great addition to your toolbox. If you'd like to purchase some brushes and support the channel at the same time, I have an affiliate link down in the video description. I'd like to give a big shout out to our supporters here on YouTube and Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. It really is a huge help. If you want to be like these amazing people and help support what I'm doing here, just click the join button down below or follow the Patreon link in the video description. Thank you. This month we had a friendly Orktober Painting Competition over on Discord. The rules were simple: paint an orc. We had a ton of great entries, and I'd like to share a few of them. The award for the greenest model goes to Mr. Doobie with this amazing cartoon-style Werboy. I've never seen orcs like this before, and it's just absolutely crazy and so cool looking. Not only is the skin the brightest green around, but every other color is blindingly vibrant too. Tarian's Big Mech wins the Most DACA award for that great-looking shock attack gun. Awesome job on the blue orbs and the lightning. And the rest of the model looks really good too. There's a great attention to detail, and I especially like the hazard stripes on the wires and the checkerboard freehand. We can't have Orktober without sharp stuff, and Savior 6 wins the Most Choppa award for these classic Warhammer Quest orcs. Really nice and clean painting, and I like the more muted color palette. They say red ones go faster, but what does that make yellow? Mini Acrylics takes the big yellow trophy for these awesome looking Killicans. I really like the yellow tone and the weathering, and the freehand is a nice touch too. Sauce painted this Rekka Crew kill team, and they win the What a Friendly Group of Lads prize. Some nice clean painting, and really cool looking blood effects too. All the entries were put up to a community vote, and Bare Necessities takes the War Boss title with this amazing Def Killa Wartrike. This model is a lot of fun, and such a great theme. The fire and glowing effects are really well done, and I love the way the glow shows through between the tire treads. Congratulations to the winners, and to everyone who participated. There were so many great entries, and it was really difficult to choose the winners. I'd like to give a very big thank you to our Discord community for participating in the competition, for voting, and most of all for encouraging everyone along the way. If you'd like to join the most positive hobby community around, there's a link down in the video description. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting!